past month or so, I haven't been able to go on any social media platform for longer than 10 minutes without seeing a handful of raving reviews about The Serpent and the Wing of Night by Carissa Broadbent. It's Hunger Games meets ACOTAR. Carissa is the new Sarah J. Maas. It was one of the best books that I've read all year. 5 stars, 10 stars, all of the stars. I'm not hating on anybody who feels that way. Obviously, everybody has the right to their own opinion. And just because I didn't like something, it doesn't mean that you can't like something. And just because you like something doesn't mean that I have to like it. One of my best friends actually is obsessed with this book at the moment, and she's the one who sent it to me because she thought that it would be my next 5-star read. But unfortunately, it obviously did not work out for me. And today's video, I wanted to discuss why this book made me realize that I have to officially part ways with BookTalk when it comes to book recommendations, and I can just no longer take their word for it. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about why me and BookTalk are breaking up, and then how those reasonings relate to why The Serpent and the Wing of Night didn't work out for me personally. And I will basically be sharing with you my review of the first half of it because I did end up DNFing it basically halfway through. Okay, so BookTalk. We just no longer are on the same page anymore. And again, no shame or hate or bad vibes towards anybody who is a fan of BookTalk, is a BookTalker, loves getting their recommendation from BookTalk, loves the book that I'm talking about in today's video, anything along those lines. The me 2 years ago was that girl who was reading and loving and recommending all the popular books on that app. And I still even do stand by a handful of them. Like, I still absolutely love and will recommend any day a handful of the very popular books that go around that platform all the time. But I've come to terms with the fact that my tastes have changed over time, and now all of the BookTalkers that end up coming up on my For You page, their taste no longer aligns with my taste, and I'm just not getting what I want to get from the recommendations that I see all of the time when I'm on that app. I think that there is a specific path that every reader goes down right when they're getting themselves into reading, whether it's for the first time in their life or they're now just refining their love of reading as an adult. And that is that they find the genre that they're interested in, delving deep into, and then they go for it. They look up all of the recommendations and see what interests them, and they go through the classic recommendations that are just super popular that everybody recommends because those are classic, good, basic books for the genre that you're interested in. And all of a sudden, everything feels new and exciting, and you're like, oh my God, I absolutely love this. I want to see what else is out there. So then you start delving deeper into the niches. So for example, I'm a fan of fantasy and romance. So I might start with classic fantasy books, but then maybe I'll move into some fantasy romance and then some urban fantasy and then maybe fantasy with a bit of a sci-fi twist to it. And I'll just see what's out there. And then same for romance. Maybe I'll start with rom-coms and just classic cutesy romances. But then maybe I'll start to learn about spice and I'll get myself into dark romances and mafia romances and maybe some small town romances or historical romances. You just really delve deep into the niches that are available within the genre that you are a fan of, and you slowly start to see what the options are. But then you'll slowly start to pick up on patterns once you start reading more and more of the same thing. So if you start to get into small town romances and then all of a sudden you're going to read like 10 small town romances, you'll pick up on the patterns and the similarities between all of the books. And then you'll start to compare them in your head, or at least this is how it went for me specifically. I started comparing them in my head to each other, and I'm like, well, this feels extremely similar to this one, and I'm starting to pick up on the patterns of how these books are generally laid out, and now I can start guessing where they're all going to go. And then all of a sudden you become more of a critical reader. You start to develop your taste of what you do and don't like, and you just have like a different taste than you did when you originally got into reading. And my whole thing is that I personally feel, at least from what I personally see, is that all of the BookTalkers on my For You page are a little bit of the newer readers who are just experiencing all of these things for the first time. And they're like, oh my God, this is so new, so exciting. I wasn't able to put it down. I've never read anything like this. One of the best books that I've read all year. And unfortunately, those books just aren't cutting it for me anymore because I've developed as a reader and I've already experienced a lot of these stories that are now being like shared for the first time and being compared to the books that I've already read and absolutely loved. And obviously, this is just me and my personal experience, but I do think think that there's going to be a handful of you that are able to relate and understand what I'm trying to say. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that I used to absolutely love BookTalk, and I used to get amazing recommendations from them. And I still think that it's an amazing, amazing place for certain type of readers who are looking for certain type of book recommendations. But I honestly cannot tell you the last time that I read a book that I originally saw on BookTalk and actually enjoyed it. And obviously there are always exceptions to be made, and I'm just talking in a very general sense here. In fact, I already do have an exception to make, which is if you're familiar with all of my content, then you know that recently I've been getting myself into bookbinding and fan fiction in general, and therefore I've been having an amazing time experiencing all of that for the first time. I'm getting a ton of amazing recommendations from people on, TikTok and everything like that who have read a lot of fanfics already and know what's good and what's not, and therefore I'm going through the same experience that I already went through in the romance department now for the fan fiction department, and everything is so new and so exciting and so different because I have not yet developed a taste for any of it because I'm now only experiencing all of it for the first time. So therefore I'm in a different boat for all of that than I am in for the general romance bookish community. But anyway, I'm getting extremely off topic here. So my point is that I've been giving BookTalk chance after chance to prove me wrong on how I'm feeling about them and their recommendations. And unfortunately, I've come to terms with the fact that I have to part ways with them in the sense of taking recommendations, thinking that this time might actually be different and maybe I'll actually enjoy this one that they're saying is one of the best books that they've read all year. So with that said, the most recent bad experience that I have had with one of the most popular books on BookTalk at the current moment is The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. So let's actually get into my review for it. So after giving the Daughter of No World series a shot, which is this author's other very popular story, and then jumping into this book, I realized that I'm just not a fan of Carissa Broadbent's writing style and the way that she generally builds up her stories. And this is kind of crazy to say because typically this is the opposite of what people would complain about, but I personally feel like she jumps into her stories way too quickly without giving us enough initial info dumping / world building, character development, and plotline development. So if you're not familiar, in this story you're following a human girl named Oriah, who at a very young age was adopted by a vampire king and therefore grew up in this fictional world where she's completely surrounded by vampires and therefore cannot trust a single person around her besides for her adopted father. So she always felt very hopeless and defenseless, and therefore her father had trained her to be able to defend herself against vampires. And every century for the past millennia, the mother of vampires hosts this Hunger Games type of tournament where 50 contestants basically fight to the death, and whoever wins ends up getting a wish from her. So Oriah decides to join this competition because she wants to ask for the power to be able to, protect herself and be on the same level as all of these vampires. So she's going to be one human girl against 49 vampire contestants, and she's going to try to win this competition. And then while she's in there, she's going to end up allying with another one of the contestants who's going to end up being our male main lead, and it's going to end up being a romance between the two of them. So that all does sound very interesting, and I would have loved to hear a little bit more about the ins and outs of how all of that came to be, but unfortunately that was literally all that we got. The entire story is extremely fast-paced and very surface level. By page 40, we were literally already in the games fighting for our lives. Page 40. Don't just tell me that Oriah is the adopted daughter to a very powerful vampire king and then thrust me straight into a millennia-old tournament that's hosted by the mother of vampires. I keep almost saying dragons because it's the mother of dragons from Game of Thrones. It's the mother of vampires. But my point is that give the world some texture first. Give it some context. Give it some history. Connect me a little more as to why I'm following this specific girl at this time in this place. You didn't give me a reason or even a chance to emotionally connect me to her before thrusting her straight into a situation where I'm supposed to be worried if she's going to live or die. Her parents died when she was too young to remember, and therefore she grew up in a space where she's always scared shitless because a vampire can come and kill her at any time and she can't trust anybody. Okay, sure, that's what made her cunning and smart and being able to defend herself. She had to grow up and be really strong so that she can survive. Okay, sure. And because of that, she now wants to win this competition so that she can get the gift to no longer feel the way that she used to feel, and so that she can be powerful and be able to live among everybody without being scared shitless. Okay, sure, but why the fuck do I care? Give me a reason to actually root for her. I keep seeing people compare this book specifically to like The Hunger Games and ACOTAR, saying how it has just as amazing of a storyline and how it has this crazy world building and how Carissa Broadbent's gonna be the new Sarah J. Maas because she's just so amazing in everything that she writes. And no hate or shame or anything like bad vibes towards anybody who felt that way, said anything along those lines, or anything like that. I really don't mean to offend anybody, but honest to God, I feel like we read two different books and I do not see what you saw. I think that if you are going to specifically compare a book to a very popular book that people are extremely familiar with, then you really have to think of the structure of those books and if this book is up to par with those, or if this book just feels familiar because you've already read a similar storyline to it. So with that said, I wanted to quickly compare all three of these books so that you can hopefully see what I'm seeing when I don't actually see what people are saying when they compare all three of these books for more than just the general storyline. So let's start with The Hunger Games. So in that book, we actually had a lot of really good texture as to the who, what, where, why, when, and how. So we have who. Her name is Candace. She's the sister of Prim. She has a dead father from a mining accident, and therefore she has an absentee mother. She is very poor, and she is from the worst district. Then we have the what. Well, she is a contestant in the Hunger Games because she wanted to save her sister Prim from actually being a contestant. And this is a game that is used as a reminder to the districts to never rebel, to remind them that the capital is always in control. Then we have the where. Well, you're in this dystopian world that's set up in a certain way that is very much explained in the book of the 13 districts and what all the districts do. And then we have the capital and the dynamics of the political situation, everything along those lines. I won't go into details, but you know that it's there, especially if you've seen the movies or even read the books. Then we have the when, which honestly, I don't know when it actually takes place, but that's a little bit besides for the point, but I'm pretty sure it's even mentioned in the actual book. And then lastly, we have the how. How did she / is she going to survive in this game and why? Well, she's an archer because she is relied on to feed her entire family. So she taught herself how to hunt, how to be cunning and smart and think on her feet. Then we have ACOTAR. So let's go through the who, what, when, why, how, and when for that one. So who? We have Feyre, who is a human girl that fell in love with the High Lord. What and why? She's a prisoner of Amarantha who agreed to face trials because she is the only one who can save the man she loves and all of his people. We're under the mountain on the Fae side of the world because humans and Fae live on different sides of the wall. And I won't even begin to explain all of the details about this universe, but trust me, if you have not read the ACOTAR series, it is definitely there. And if you've read it, then you know the details about this entire world and the texture of it and the layout and the map and just how the humans and the Fae interact and what the whole situation of all of that is. Then we have the when. We're at the brink of disaster, the moment before everybody is about to lose their powers to the wicked Amarantha who had tricked them all 50 years ago. And then lastly, we have the how. How is this illiterate human going to actually win trials against this high Fae queen, whatever it is she wants to call herself? She's going to win with the help of Rysand, a very powerful High Lord that everybody should thinks that they should fear because he comes off as very scary and they all perceive him as a specific way and like he's Amarantha's whore and he's just not the good guy. But obviously Feyre for some reason sees something different in him and isn't scared of him and is going to use his help to actually save everybody. And even if you wanted to specifically compare this book to A Court of Silver Flames and the tournament that happened at the end of that book, just think about the build-up that we actually got for that tournament and why it is so sacred and has the history that it has and how those characters came to be in that tournament and why. Just think about all of that build-up that we got not only throughout the entire book of A Court of Silver Flames, but also the entire ACOTAR series as a whole. You were already prepared to be emotionally invested, not only in the tournament itself, but also the characters by the time we finally jumped into all of the action. But now in this book, we have none of that texture, none of that context, none of the build-up or the history to make me actually connect to this girl in this time, in this place, in this tournament that supposedly is a millennia's year old, but we don't actually know anything about it because we just jump straight into the story without getting any of the initial context surrounding it. All we know is that there's this girl named Oriah who is the adopted daughter to a vampire king, and she was trained her entire life to be strong and cunning because she had to be able to survive amongst vampires. So therefore she thinks that she's strong enough to actually join a competition with all vampires that are hundreds of years old and has magical powers and can somehow win so that she can get a gift to actually make her strong and powerful so that she no longer feels weak and helpless. And I'm sorry, but that's just not as good of a reason as, let's say, joining a competition so that you can save your sister from imminent death because the government chooses to kill off children as a form of entertainment so that they can keep all of their people in line. Or let's say agreeing to trials to save the man that you love and all of his people. No. In this story, people volunteer to join just for clout and also to Win-A-Wish. And then even besides for all of that, you have this fictional world that has humans and vampires living amongst one another, but the vampires somehow control the humans, and the vampires are also split up into two different clans that are constantly at war with each other, and that is more or less like all of the information that I got. I honestly have like a list of questions that I feel like I am just not going to get answers to. Like, first up, why is this human girl living amongst vampires? Like, why did this vampire king come and sweep her away from the rubble when she was a child? Was she in the rubble because of this vampire war that's been going on? Why has this war started? What's up with the history there? Like, why do they have such something against one another, these two vampires that both have the same mother, because there's a mother of vampires? And then even besides for that, how are the humans protected in this world and the vampires don't just like use them as food left and right? Is there some sort of treaty that's going on? Is there a governing person that's like keeping everybody in line? What is the situation with it? Like, I just do not understand any of the context surrounding the rules of this actual universe. And then even on top of that, you have magic in this world, but you have humans and then you have vampires. Then you also have some humans that could have magic, and then you also have some vampires that could have magic. So what's the deal with that? Like, who gets to choose what who gets? Like, I saw somewhere in the book that there was something about like deities give these people the magic, so therefore everybody has different magic depending on like what deity they came from, but the only deity we know of is like the mother of vampires. So it's just super confusing to me as to like, how does the magic system work? What's the hierarchy? How is the governing political system situation thing going on in this book? Like, there is just no information on it, and I feel like this entire book was just like extremely surface level and basic on all fronts. Like, not even character development and world building, but like plot building and just like everything along the lines. Just, there was no information, and I just wanted a little bit more texture, a little bit more backbone, a little bit more information, literally on all fronts. And then since this review has already been way longer than it should have been, I'm just gonna keep on going with sharing with you some other things that ended up really pissing me the fuck off as I was reading The Serpent of Wings and Night, especially in the sense of like comparisons to other series that I personally picked up on myself. And the thing is that I understand that it is very hard to come up with something original, and everything is going to feel similar to something else. And it is definitely on me for making those comparisons and then judging one book based off of my prior knowledge of another. But my issue with some of the things that I ended up feeling towards this book, in the sense of like, it is definitely being heavily inspired by some other books, is the sense that she clearly got her inspiration from it. Because first of all, in her literal synopsis on Goodreads, she's like, this is for fans of Sarah J. Maas and Jennifer L. Armentrout. So obviously she is well aware of the Sarah J. Maas fandom and what those books are about and things along those lines. So if that is the case, and you're already clearly saying that if you like this book, you're gonna like this book, then at least give us something slightly original that still has the feeling that we're potentially looking for. So one comparison that I had seen in this book was our two main male characters. So in the Serpent book, we have Rain, and then in Agatar, we obviously have Rhysand. So I won't make any comment whatsoever on the fact that both of their names start with the letter R, because there are only 26 letters in the alphabet to choose from for the first letter of your main character's name, so whatever. But then on top of that, you also have both of them being winged males that are extremely powerful and hundreds of years old. So I won't say anything on that either, mostly because a lot of fantasy romance books do have main male characters along the lines of that description and everything like that. But what really ended up pissing me off was the parallels between Lucian not showing up under the mountain when Feyre needed him most, and he was well aware that she was in trouble and needed like his magic to save her life. And then the same thing happened with Oriah when Vincent didn't end up showing up. Vincent is, you know, her father, her adopted father, whatever it is you want to call it. Like, she went in a tournament, she got hurt, she clearly needed help, and he was well aware of that, and yet he didn't show up. So that ended up putting both Oriah and Feyre in the same situation of basically needing to take anybody that was willing to save her life. So in Feyre's situation, we have Rhys who comes and offers her the bargain, and then in the Serpent book, whatever it is, you have Rain who goes and offers her the potion that her father was supposed to bring her but didn't. And they literally have no other choice, because they're, look, I'm either gonna die or someone's gonna come save me, but no one's coming to save me because they don't realize that I'm that close to death, because they're idiot immortals and they don't realize how fragile a human being is. So therefore they both end up having to take what is offered to them, and then they come like unlikely allies of sorts. And that is the start of how both of our main male characters end up coming into our main female characters' lives. And I just think that you could have been a little bit more original with that initial setup. And look, I understand that like you shouldn't be comparing the two books too much, but at the end of the day, it's like if the author's clearly stating that if you liked one, you like the other, why wouldn't my mind naturally go there of being like, well, why are these similar? What would make me feel that way? And then once I'm looking out for those things, how could it not pop up straight in my face of being like, I've already read this situation happen in another book that honestly I like more because it did it better, you know? And then anyway, even on top of that, there was this moment, I feel like I had it like written down somewhere. I think it was like page like 177 or something, but like there was this moment where like they're trying to become closer with one another and stuff like that, like try to work together. And then the main guy is like, look, do you remember when you asked me for one honest thing? And then she's like, look, I nodded. And he's like, one honest thing, Oriah, we have 3 weeks until the half moon trial. Are we really going to work together? And then like, you know, it goes through the whole thing of like her, saying like, yeah, I think we will work together. But it's like, why are you asking for one honest thing? Does that not sound like Starfall to me? I'm sorry, but like that is a fair and Rysand thing going on of like, oh, you share with me one honest thing and I'll share with you one honest thing. And then literally this couple decided to steal it. And then I just wanted to make one more comparison because this is something I actually have specifically seen like 3 people point out and been like, oh my God, I love this dynamic because it totally reminds me of Selena and Arabin from Throne of Glass. And I'm talking about Oriah and her adopted father in the sense of how he had trained her entire life so that she can like, you know, be strong and defend herself and things like that. And then you have Selena and Arabin who more or less have the same situation because like she is an assassin that was trained by Arabin to basically be his protege and stuff like that. But my issue is that this book had none of the same buildup as that relationship. Like in Assassin's Blade, we literally have an entire book of building up Selena and Arabin's dynamic and why they are the way they are and the dynamics just between the two of them in general and everything along those lines. And then even besides for Assassin's Blade, we have so much more than that builds up throughout the rest of the story and specifically their relationship. And in this book, we literally got none of that. It's like you took the idea of the dynamic relationship, whatever it is you want to call it, and then you literally just like told us. It's like, oh yeah, he's been training her entire life and therefore like she is super strong and there's like literally no other backstory to that whatsoever. Alrighty, I know that I was going way too off topic there and I spent way too long comparing this book to others, but at the end of the day, that is kind of just the experience that I had with it. And what's funny is that lately I've been trying to go into books completely blind. I'm like, look, don't tell me anything about it. I'm not gonna look up anything online because I really don't wanna have any expectations going into this other than the fact of like, oh, this was recommended to me because someone really liked it or not. So I went into this book completely blind, had no idea there were vampires, had no idea there was a tournament or anything along those lines. I'm like, I know zero about this book. And yet I slowly started picking up on all these comparisons naturally. And then once I started getting into the story and I'm like, well, now I know what it's about, I started to actually start listening to what people had to say about it when I was scrolling on BookTalk and everything along those lines. And I'm just like, I feel like we are reading 2 different stories. And therefore, just because of a mix of like annoyance and just like overall aggravation, I ended up DNFing this book halfway through. And my only regret is that honestly, I didn't do it sooner because I feel like I should have learned my lesson when I had read Daughter of No World. And I kind of had the same issue of like, this is feeling too similar to other stuff and I'm not getting enough build up and it's all happening too fast. And I literally couldn't care less about anything that's happening because I feel no connection to anything whatsoever. I should have been like, oh, well, if I'm feeling that with this book, it's probably going to go down the same way. And instead I pushed myself through. I got halfway through. I'm like, look, maybe it will get better over time. Like sometimes books do take a moment to like settle into themselves. And I'm like, look, I'll give it a chance. And then the further and further I got, I'm like, it's just not going to go where I want it to go. I feel it. I know that it's going to happen. And therefore I gave up and I'm happy that I gave up before I pushed myself any further and then regretted wasting even more of my time. And so with that said, me and BookTalk are officially parting ways when it comes to book recommendations specifically. And I say this in a very general sense, but again, I just tend to find the same issues that I had with this book in other books that end up being very popular on BookTalk, just in the sense of like the way it's built up in general and just everything along the lines of like, it is just not up to par with where my taste in reading currently is. And again, this is totally on me and no hate towards anybody who likes BookTalk recommendations, is a book talker, is recommending these books, anything along those lines. We are just looking for different things when it comes to books and I think that's totally okay. I'm not offending anybody. Just because you like something doesn't mean I have to like it, and just because I don't like something or I do like something doesn't mean that you have to feel the same way about it. That's the amazing thing about reading. Everybody has the right to their own opinion, and this was my my personal opinion. So with that said, I think that was everything that I wanted to share with you for my extremely long rant review on The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent, as well as why I'm officially breaking up with the BookTalk recommendations. So I am so curious to know if anybody actually made it to the end of this video. So if you did, please leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought of my review, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me, if you hear where I'm coming from at the very least. I would love to continue the conversation down below, even though I feel like I already talked about everything I could possibly talk about for this book. So anyway, with that said, if you enjoyed watching this video and you actually made it to the end, please give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel if you're not currently subscribed, because I would so appreciate it. But either way, I just appreciate you taking the time to watch my video, so thank you so much for that. And with that said, until next time, enjoy reading.